She got pregnant by a man she'd never see again, until his name appeared on a hotel billboard. Hello, let's hear another incredible story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I love narrating stories for you, so get ready. Let's start. The California coast stretched before Danielle Thompson like a promise written in gold and blue. Standing at the edge of the Clifftop Retreats grounds, she raised her camera to her eye, an instinct as natural as breathing, but lowered it again without taking the shot. The sunset was perfect, almost too perfect, like something from a postcard shop in Times Square. That was exactly the kind of photography she'd come here to escape. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another message from her gallery back in New York, no doubt, asking about her next exhibition. Danielle let it ring into silence. 6 months ago, she would have answered before the first buzz ended. 6 months ago, she'd been a rising star in the Brooklyn art scene, her raw, intimate portraits of city life drawing praise from critics who loved using words like unflinching and authentic. 6 months ago, before she'd found Lucas with his hands tangled in another photographer's hair in their shared dark room, the memory still stung, but differently now. Less like a knife between the ribs and more like an old bruise, tender to the touch but fading. The real wound wasn't the betrayal, it was how the experience had infected her art. Every photo she'd taken since then felt hollow, performative. She'd lost her eye, or maybe her heart. Sometimes they felt like the same thing. The Seacliff Arts Retreat had been her agent's idea. 2 weeks on the Pacific coast, Regina had said, dark eyes serious behind vintage frames. No pressure, no deadlines. Just you, your camera, and whatever inspiration finds you. She'd pushed the brochure across her desk like a lifeline. Now, watching the sun paint the waves in shades of amber and rose, Danielle wondered if Regina had been right. The air here tasted different, salt and cypress and something else, something that whispered of possibility. A movement caught her eye. A man stood further down the cliff path, his back to her, hands in the pockets of worn jeans. He was looking out at the ocean with such stillness that for a moment Danielle thought he might be a statue. Then he shifted his weight, and the last rays of sunlight caught his profile. Her fingers itched for her camera. There was something in his pose, in the way tension and grace seemed to war in his shoulders, that spoke to her artist's eye. Before she could stop herself, she raised her Leica and adjusted the focus. The click was soft, barely audible above the wind and waves, but he turned as if she'd called his name. Their eyes met across 30 feet of salt-weathered grass, and Danielle felt something shift in her chest. Like furniture being rearranged in a room she thought she'd known by heart. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and they held hers with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. A half-smile tugged at one corner of his mouth, not amusement, exactly, but something more complex. Recognition, maybe, though they'd never met. Most people ask first, he said. His voice was low, carrying easily despite the distance and wind. There was a slight accent she couldn't place, something that softened the edges of his words. Danielle lowered her camera, embarrassment warring with an unexpected flutter of excitement. I'm sorry. Professional hazard. I can delete it. He shook his head, taking a few steps closer. Keep it, but I'm curious. What made you take it? The question surprised her. Most people asked what she was going to do with their photo, not what had inspired it. She found herself answering honestly, the way you were standing. It was like you were having a conversation with the ocean, a serious one. That earned her a real smile, brief but genuine. Maybe I was. He glanced back at the water, then to her again. You're here for the retreat. Yes, Danielle Thompson. I'm a photographer from New York. The words came out automatically, her standard introduction at gallery openings and art shows. Here, with the sun setting and this stranger's storm cloud eyes on her, they felt inadequate. Just a photographer. He tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable, but instead made her skin tingle. Your work must be more interesting than that. And you are, she countered, deflecting. He paused, something flickering behind his eyes. "Jay," he said finally. Just that, one letter, offered like a coin tossed into a fountain. "I'm here to reset some things." The way he said it resonated with something in her chest. Resetting things. Wasn't that why she was here too? To find her way back to herself? Or maybe forward to someone new? A gust of wind caught her hair, sending dark curls dancing around her face. When she pushed them back, she found Jay watching her with an expression she couldn't read. The air between them felt charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. "Would the light's almost gone," he said softly, and she wasn't sure if he meant the sunset or something else entirely. "But maybe we'll run into each other again. It's a small retreat, after all." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, his steps sure even in the growing darkness. Danielle watched until he disappeared around the bend in the path, her heart beating an unfamiliar rhythm against her ribs. Later, in her room, she uploaded the photo to her laptop. It was a good shot, the composition, the way the dying light painted him in shades of gold and shadow. But it was his pose that caught her, just as it had in person. There was a story in the set of his shoulders, in the way his hands rested in his pockets. She could spend hours trying to decode it. She found herself thinking of the way he'd said his name, Jay, like he was offering a mystery instead of an introduction. In New York, mysteries usually meant trouble. Here, with the sound of the Pacific washing against the cliffs below her window, it felt more like an invitation. Danielle closed her laptop, but she couldn't close off the memory of storm cloud eyes and that half-smile that seemed to know her better than it should. She'd come to California to reset, to find her artistic voice again. She hadn't expected to find someone else instead. Outside her window, the moon rose over the ocean, painting a silver path across the water. Somewhere in the darkness, a man who called himself Jay was perhaps looking at the same light, carrying his own unknowable weights. Tomorrow, she told herself, she would focus on her art, on the reason she'd come here. But as she drifted off to sleep, her dreams were filled with storm clouds and silent conversations with the sea. The morning workshop buzzed with creative energy, but Danielle's thoughts kept drifting to the shadowy figure from last night. She sat at the back of the sun-filled studio, her notebook open but empty, while the instructor discussed the intersection of different art forms. Around her, other artists sketched and scribbled, their enthusiasm palpable. "Photography isn't just about capturing what exists," the instructor was saying. "It's about revealing what lies beneath, the truth behind the obvious." A movement at the door caught her attention. Jay slipped into the room, like a shadow finding its place in the light. He wore a simple black t-shirt that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, and when his eyes met hers across the room, that same electric current from last night sparked between them. He chose a seat by the window, sunlight playing across his angular features, and Danielle found herself studying him with both a photographer's eye and something more personal. After the workshop, she lingered in the courtyard, pretending to review her notes while secretly hoping he might appear. The Mediterranean-style garden was alive with the buzz of hummingbirds and the soft splash of a stone fountain. "I still chasing light?" His voice came from behind her, carrying that same hint of accent she couldn't place. Danielle turned, her heart doing a small dance in her chest. "Actually, I haven't taken a single photo today. Guess I'm not feeling very inspired." "Now that," he said, settling onto the bench beside her, "I don't believe." He gestured to the garden around them. "An artist like you sees beauty everywhere. Maybe you're just afraid of what you might capture." The observation hit too close to home. Since Lucas, she'd been holding back, taking safe shots that wouldn't reveal too much of herself. "You sound like you know something about that." A shadow passed across his face. "Let's just say I understand the impulse to edit ourselves." He pulled a small sketchbook from his back pocket, and Danielle caught a glimpse of architectural drawings, precise lines and sweeping curves that spoke of both technical skill and artistic vision. "You're an architect." He closed the book quickly, almost defensively. "Sometimes, among other things." that half smile again, the one that seemed to hide as much as it revealed. What would you capture right now if you weren't afraid? The question hung between them like a challenge. Danielle thought about her camera, safely packed away in her room. Honestly, you. His eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't look away. What makes me such an interesting subject? You're all contrast, she said, the words coming without thought. Light and shadow, open and hidden. It's like you're two different people occupying the same space. Jay was quiet for a long moment, his eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her skin warm. Maybe we all are, he said finally. Maybe that's what makes us interesting. They spent the afternoon talking, the conversation flowing as naturally as the breeze off the ocean. Jay asked about her work, and Danielle found herself sharing things she rarely discussed. How photography had saved her after her mother's death, how she saw the world differently through a lens, how lately she'd lost faith in her own vision. In return, he told her about growing up with expectations weighing on his shoulders, about finding freedom in design, about a family legacy that felt more like a cage than a gift. But there was always something held back, details missing from his stories, like shadows in a bright room. As the sun began to set, they walked along the cliff path where they'd first met. The fog was rolling in, turning the world soft and mysterious. Their hands brushed occasionally, each touch sending little sparks through Danielle's skin. "I have a confession," Jay said, stopping at the cliff's edge. "And I couldn't sleep last night, thinking about that photo you took." Danielle's breath caught. "Why?" "Because—" He turned to face her, close enough now that she could see the flecks of silver in his eyes. "I wondered what you saw when you looked at me through your lens. What truth you might have captured that I've been trying to hide." The air between them grew thick with possibility. Danielle could feel her heart pounding, could sense that they were standing on the edge of something dangerous and exhilarating. "I could show you," she whispered. They ended up in her room, where her laptop still held the image from yesterday. As she pulled it up, Jay stood close behind her, his presence like a warm shadow. The photo appeared on screen, his figure silhouetted against the sunset, strength and vulnerability written in every line of his body. "Is that really how you see me?" His voice was rough with emotion. Danielle turned in her chair, and suddenly they were face to face, inches apart. "It's just one moment," she said. "One truth out of many." "And what's the truth of this moment?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Danielle found herself standing, drawn up by some force she couldn't name. Jay's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing her jawline with aching gentleness. "The truth is," she breathed, "I'm terrified of what I'm feeling right now. Then we're both afraid." His other hand found her waist, drawing her closer. "Maybe that's okay." The kiss, when it came, was like developing a photograph, an image slowly emerging from darkness into light. Soft at first, then deeper, more urgent. Danielle's hands found their way into his hair, across the planes of his shoulders. Every touch felt like revelation. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Jay rested his forehead against hers. "We should stop," he whispered, but his arms tightened around her. "Should we?" He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, and in his gaze she saw the same war she felt inside, desire versus caution, connection versus fear. "No," he said finally. We shouldn't stop at all." Outside, the fog had swallowed the world, creating a cocoon of privacy around them. Tomorrow, Danielle knew, they would have to face whatever this was becoming. But tonight they could be like her photographs, capturing one perfect moment in time, preserving it forever in light and shadow. Jay's lips found hers again, and Danielle let herself fall into the kiss, into the promise of what was to come. For the first time since Lucas, since her art had turned hollow, she felt truly seen. And in Jay's arms, in this room wrapped in coastal fog and growing darkness, she finally felt ready to see herself again too. Danielle woke to the sound of waves and the first hint of sunrise filtering through the gauzy curtains. For a moment, she lay perfectly still, aware of the warm weight of Jay's arm draped across her waist, the steady rhythm of his breathing against her neck. The night's memories washed over her, passionate kisses that turned tender, whispered confessions in the dark, the way his hands had traced her skin like he was memorizing a map he never wanted to forget. She turned carefully in his embrace, studying his sleeping face. In repose, the careful guard he usually maintained was gone, replaced by a vulnerability that made her heart ache. A faint scar traced his jawline, barely visible in the dim light. She resisted the urge to touch it, to ask its story. They'd agreed, somewhere between kisses and shared breaths, no past, no future, just this moment, preserved like a photograph in time. As if sensing her gaze, Jay's eyes fluttered open. The storm cloud grey was darker in the dawn light, heavy with something that looked like regret. "Good morning," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "Do morning," she whispered back, suddenly unsure of the rules in this new daylight territory. He reached up, brushing a curl from her face with gentle fingers. "You're even more beautiful in the morning light." The words held a sadness that made her chest tight. "Don't," she said softly. "Don't make this feel like goodbye." "Isn't it?" His hand stilled against her cheek. "We both know this can't be more than what it is." "What it was." Danielle sat up, pulling the sheet around herself, though after last night it felt like a pointless modesty. "Because you won't let it be." The words came out sharper than she intended. Jay rose too, running a hand through his disheveled dark hair. In the strengthening light, she could see marks on his shoulder where her fingers had gripped him, evidence of passion that would soon fade, like everything else about this night. "There are things," he started, then stopped, frustration evident in the set of his jaw. "My life is complicated, Danielle. There are expectations, responsibilities, things I can't walk away from. Can't or won't." She reached for her robe, suddenly needing the armor of fabric between them. He watched her move across the room, his expression a mix of desire and resignation. "Both, neither. I don't know anymore." He stood, gathering his scattered clothes with methodical precision. "What I do know is that last night was—" He paused, searching for words. "Perfect," she finished for him. "And now it's over." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Through the window, the sun was rising properly now, painting the ocean in shades of pink and gold. A beautiful morning for heartbreak. "Oh, you're going to be late for your morning consultation," she said finally, remembering his mention of an important call, a call he wouldn't explain. He nodded, buttoning his shirt. Every motion seemed to put more distance between them, rebuilding the walls that had crumbled in the night. "Danielle, don't apologize," she cut him off. "We knew what this was." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Jay crossed the room to where she stood, his movements careful, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt. When his hands framed her face, she let him, even as her heart protested the gentleness of his touch. "Thank you," he whispered, "for showing me what freedom feels like." Then he kissed her, soft and sweet and final. When the door clicked shut behind him, Danielle pressed her fingers to her lips, trying to preserve the sensation of his last kiss. Her photographer's eye couldn't help cataloguing the evidence of his presence, the rumpled sheets, the indent in the pillow, a forgotten pencil from his sketchbook on the nightstand. She picked it up, rolling it between her fingers. The tears, when they came, surprised her. She hadn't expected to cry over a man she'd known for barely 2 days, a man who wouldn't even tell her his full name. But maybe she was crying for more than just Jay, for the way he'd made her feel alive again, for the art she could feel stirring in her soul, for the possibility of love that had bloomed and withered in the space of a single night. Later that morning, she forced herself to attend the workshop's closing session. Jay wasn't there. Someone mentioned he'd had to leave early. A family emergency, they thought. Danielle listened with a detached sort of interest, as if they were discussing a character in a book rather than the man who'd left marks on her heart. In the afternoon, she walked down to the beach, her camera hanging heavy around her neck. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, waves breaking against the shore in a rhythm as old as time. She raised her camera, finally ready to shoot again. The images she captured that day were different from anything she'd done before. There was a raw honesty to them, a willingness to embrace both light and shadow. She photographed the way the waves erased footprints in the sand, the lonely flight of seabirds against the vast sky, the delicate patterns left by retreating tide. Each shot felt like a piece of her heart being developed in real time, pain transforming into art. As the sun began to set, painting the world in the same golden light that had blessed their first meeting, Danielle sat in the sand and opened her laptop. The photo she'd taken of Jay still waited there, his figure forever frozen in that moment of contemplation. She thought about deleting it, a clean break, a fresh start. Instead, she created a new folder labeled simply Freedom and saved it there. Her flight back to New York was scheduled for the next morning. She'd come to California seeking inspiration, hoping to recover her artistic voice. She'd found something else entirely, a connection that felt both profound and transient, like writing in wet sand. That night, in her half-empty room, Danielle wrote in her journal for the first time in months. Some moments aren't meant to last. They're like photographs, capturing a single breath of time, perfect in their impermanence. But the beauty of photography is that even fleeting things can leave permanent marks on our hearts, changing how we see the world forever. She closed the journal and packed it away, along with the pencil she couldn't bring herself to leave behind. Tomorrow she would return to her life in New York, to her gallery shows and city rhythms. She would create art from this exquisite pain, transform longing into light. But tonight, she let herself remember the taste of his kisses, the sound of his laugh, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. Tonight, she held the memory close, not knowing that in 3 months' time, these memories would take on an entirely new meaning, when a single missed period would change everything. The white stick clattered against the bathroom sink, but Danielle couldn't take her eyes off it. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. Her hands gripped the cool porcelain as the morning sickness that had brought her here, the sickness she'd blamed on stress and late nights in the darkroom, took on an entirely new meaning. Well, shit, she whispered to her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked both terrified and oddly calm, like a portrait captured between moments of chaos. Her gallery show had opened last week to rave reviews. The collection, inspired by her time in California, had sold out in 2 days. Critics praised the raw, emotional honesty and fearless exploration of intimacy and loss. If they only knew. The buzzing of her phone broke through her daze. Regina's name flashed on the screen, probably calling about the New York Times review. Danielle let it go to voicemail. Instead, she found herself opening her laptop, clicking through to that folder labeled Freedom. The photo was still there. James, she corrected herself, though the name felt foreign, standing at the cliff's edge, carrying all his unspoken weights. "What would you do?" she asked the image, "if you knew?" But the figure remained silent, forever frozen in that moment of contemplation. 3 hours and 2 more pregnancy tests later, Danielle sat in her favorite coffee shop, nursing a cup of herbal tea she'd never normally order. Her best friend Olivia sat across from her, hands wrapped around her own untouched latte. "You're sure?" Olivia asked for the 3rd time. "Like, absolutely sure. 3 tests sure." Danielle managed a weak smile. "Turns out morning sickness isn't just a clever name." "And the father?" Olivia hesitated. You really don't know anything about him?" Danielle traced the rim of her cup. "I know he has architect's hands. I know he carries his sketchbook everywhere. I know he has a scar along his jaw, and his eyes change color with his mood." She swallowed hard. "I know he has responsibilities he can't or won't walk away from, but his full name, his phone number, where he lives—" She shook her head. "Nothing. You could try to find him. With what you know—" "No!" The word came out sharp. Definitive. He made his choice that morning. This, she pressed a hand to her still flat stomach. This is my choice to make now. Olivia reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Whatever you decide, I'm here. But Danielle realized she'd already decided, somewhere between those two pink lines and this moment. The thought of ending this pregnancy, of erasing this last connection to that perfect, impossible night, made her chest ache. It wasn't rational. She knew that. Her career was just taking off. Single motherhood would be incredibly challenging. But when had love ever been rational? I'm keeping it, she said softly, then stronger. I'm keeping the baby. The next few months passed in a blur of doctor's appointments, morning sickness, and relentless work. Danielle threw herself into her photography with renewed passion, as if trying to capture enough success to cushion whatever challenges lay ahead. Her pregnancy became a sort of open secret in the art world, whispered about but never directly addressed in reviews that praised her evolving perspective and deepening emotional resonance. She documented everything, weekly photos of her growing belly, the first ultrasound image that made it all feel real, the way her body changed, becoming both familiar and foreign. Some nights, she'd sit in her makeshift home studio, reviewing the images and thinking about how life, like photography, was all about light and timing. At 5 months, during a routine ultrasound, the technician asked if she wanted to know the sex. A girl, the woman said, smiling. See, right there. Danielle stared at the grainy image, tears blurring her vision. A daughter. She thought of her own mother, gone too soon but whose influence still shaped every photo she took. Nova, she whispered, the name coming to her unbidden. New, a star being born from cosmic dust and gravity and chance. That evening, she sat at her desk, the ultrasound photo propped against her laptop. She'd started keeping a journal for Nova, filling it with stories and thoughts and pieces of herself she wanted to share. My dearest Nova, today I learned who you are, though in truth I think I've known from the beginning. You're the story I never expected to tell, the light that found me when I was lost in my own shadows. Your father, he gave me back my art, my voice, in a way he'll never know. And now you're giving me something even greater, a future I never knew I wanted until it was already growing inside me. Some people might call you an accident, a consequence of one passionate night, but I'm a photographer, little one. I know that sometimes the most beautiful images come from unplanned moments, from light falling just so, from chemistry and timing and a little bit of magic. You are my masterpiece. The autumn light was fading outside her Brooklyn apartment, painting the walls in shades of gold that reminded her of California sunsets. Danielle rested her hand on her swelling belly, feeling the flutter of movement that had recently started, like butterfly wings or ocean waves. It's just you and me, kid, she said softly. But we're going to be amazing. Her phone buzzed. Regina again. This time about a major commission offer. The art world wasn't going to wait for her to become a mother. But for the first time since that morning in the bathroom, Danielle felt truly ready for whatever came next. She'd built her career capturing moments of beauty and truth. Now she was living one. She opened her laptop, creating a new folder next to freedom. This one she labeled Nova, and into it she placed the ultrasound image, along with all the photographs documenting this journey. In the dim light of her studio, both folders glowed on the screen. Past and future, love and consequence, endings and beginnings. Outside, New York hummed with its endless energy, indifferent to the small miracles unfolding in a photographer's apartment. But inside, Danielle Thompson was developing her most important work yet, not in silver nitrate and light, but in blood and bone and unconditional love. Mama, look, I'm a butterfly. 3-year-old Nova twirled in her rainbow tutu, dark curls bouncing, arms spread wide. Morning light streamed through the windows of their Brooklyn apartment, catching the glitter on her wings and creating tiny prisms that danced across the hardwood floors. Danielle was already reaching for her camera, muscle memory born from countless moments like this. Through the viewfinder, she watched her daughter spin, the motion blurring into something ethereal. Click, Nova, mid-twirl, joy radiating from every pixel. Click. Those eyes, storm cloud grey like her father's, sparkling with delight. Again, Mama, take more. Baby girl, if I take any more photos of you, we're going to need a whole new hard drive. But she was already adjusting her settings, because how could she resist? Nova was pure light in human form, and capturing light was what Danielle did best. The wall of their living room told the story of their life together. Professional prints mixed with casual snapshots, arranged in a careful chaos that gallery owners had tried to replicate but never quite managed. Nova's first steps, her second birthday party, face covered in chocolate cake, the two of them at the beach last summer, Nova perched on Danielle's shoulders like a queen surveying her domain. Ms. Thompson, Carmen, their nanny, appeared in the doorway. "Are your cars here?" Reality crashed back in. The Atlanta Contemporary Arts Conference. 3 days of panels, networking, and a major exhibition of her latest work. Her first time leaving Nova for more than an overnight trip. Right, yes. Danielle lowered her camera, trying to ignore the tightness in her chest. "Nova, baby, come here." Nova danced over, butterfly wings shimmering. At 3, she was already showing signs of the beauty she would become, a perfect blend of Danielle's features and those of the man whose name she still didn't know. Sometimes, when Nova was lost in thought, her brow would furrow in exactly the same way Jay's had that morning on the cliff, and Danielle's heart would skip a beat. "Remember what we talked about?" Danielle knelt to her daughter's level. "Me mama has to go take pictures in Atlanta for a few days, and you'll call every night." Nova's lower lip trembled slightly. "Every night, twice, and Carmen will be here the whole time, and Auntie Olivia is coming for a special sleepover tomorrow. And you'll bring me something pretty." Danielle laughed, pulling her daughter close. "The prettiest thing I can find." She breathed in Nova's scent. Baby shampoo and sunshine, and something uniquely her. "Be good for Carmen, okay?" "I'm always good," Nova protested, then stage whispered, "except when I'm being spectacular." That phrase, pure Olivia's influence, made Danielle laugh even as tears threatened. She hugged Nova tight one more time, then forced herself to stand. Her carry-on was by the door, her exhibition prints already shipped ahead. Everything was arranged, so why did it feel like she was forgetting something essential? And Carmen must have read her expression. "We'll be fine," she assured her. "Won't we, Nova?" Nova nodded solemnly, then broke into a twirl. Butterflies are always fine. The car ride to LaGuardia gave Danielle time to review her conference schedule on her tablet. Her latest collection, Inherited Light, had caught the attention of major galleries across the country. The exhibition in Atlanta could open doors she'd only dreamed of before. She scrolled through the images, portraits of mothers and daughters, capturing moments of connection that felt almost too intimate to witness. Nova appeared in several, though never showing her full face. Danielle was fierce about protecting her daughter's privacy, even as Nova became her most frequent subject. Her phone buzzed with a text from Regina. "CNN wants to interview you about the maternal gaze in modern photography. Thursday, 2 p.m. Say yes." Danielle smiled. 3 years ago, pregnant and scared, she'd worried that motherhood would derail her career. Instead, it had deepened her art in ways she never expected. Nova hadn't just changed her life, she'd changed how Danielle saw the world. The flight to Atlanta was smooth, giving her time to edit some recent shoots. She'd developed a specialty in family photography that went beyond the usual posed portraits. Critics called her work unflinching yet tender, praising her ability to capture the complex dynamics of modern families. Families. The word caught in her throat like always. Nova had a family. A fierce, loving circle of friends who had become aunties and uncles, grandparent figures who spoiled her rotten. But there was still that empty space in their story, that missing piece that Danielle saw every time Nova asked about her father. "He gave me the most precious gift," she always said, "and then he had to go away." It wasn't a lie, exactly, just a careful cropping of the truth. Late afternoon sun was painting Atlanta's skyline in shades of amber when her plane landed. The conference had arranged a car to take her to the hotel, a sleek downtown high-rise that catered to the arts crowd. As they drove through the city streets, Danielle found herself instinctively framing shots. The play of light on glass buildings, the way shadows stretched across the pavement. Her phone buzzed again. A video call from Nova and Carmen. Her daughter's face filled the screen, butterfly wings still firmly in place. "Mama, I helped Carmen make cookies, and I only spilled a little flour, and I saw a real butterfly in the garden." "Did you see any butterflies in Atlanta?" "I just got here, sweet girl, but I'll keep my eyes open for butterflies just for you. Promise. Cross my heart." After saying goodnight, Danielle stood at her hotel window, watching the city lights bloom in the gathering dusk. Tomorrow would be full of meetings, presentations, networking, but tonight she had time to explore, maybe find that perfect gift for Nova. She grabbed her camera and headed out, letting her photographer's instincts guide her through unfamiliar streets. Atlanta had a different energy than New York, slower, warmer, but with its own kind of intensity. She found herself capturing random moments: a street musician's weathered hands on guitar strings, two elderly women laughing on a park bench, a child's abandoned toy on a cafe table. The huge digital billboard ahead caught her attention, something about an international architecture conference happening in the same hotel complex. She raised her camera, interested in how the electronic light played against the deepening night sky, and then the image on the billboard changed. The camera slipped from suddenly numb fingers, saved only by its strap. Danielle stared up at the massive display, her heart stopping, then racing, then stopping again. Those eyes. That face? 3 years older but unmistakable. James Holden, award-winning architect and keynote speaker. The man she'd known only as Jay stared down at her from 40 feet high, his half-smile exactly as she remembered it, the same scar along his jaw, the same storm cloud eyes that Nova had inherited. Somewhere in their apartment back in Brooklyn, their daughter was probably still dancing in her butterfly wings, unaware that her world was about to change. And here in Atlanta, Danielle Thompson stood frozen on a street corner, realizing that sometimes the past didn't stay neatly filed away in folders labeled freedom. Sometimes it came back in bright lights and billboard signs, demanding to be remembered. Danielle barely remembered returning to her hotel room. Her hands shook as she pulled up her laptop, fingers trembling over the keys as she typed, "James Holden Architect." The search results flooded her screen. Images, articles, awards. The face she'd known only as Jay stared back at her from professional headshots and conference appearances. James Holden, 34, principal architect at Holden & Associates, one of the largest architectural firms in Boston, son of real estate mogul Richard Holden, recently named one of Architecture Digest's 40 Under 40. "Son of a bitch," she whispered, clicking through photos. Here he was, accepting an award, wearing an expertly tailored suit. There he was breaking ground on a new development, golden shovel in hand. Each image felt like a punch to the gut, pieces of a puzzle she'd never known she was solving. Her phone buzzed, a text from Carmen with a photo of Nova asleep, butterfly wings still attached. The sight of her daughter's peaceful face, so like her father's, made Danielle's chest ache. She opened her conference schedule. James's keynote was tomorrow at 11 a.m. Sustainable Design, Building Tomorrow's Legacy. The irony made her laugh, a sharp sound in the quiet room. Sleep proved impossible. She paced her hotel room, photographer's eye automatically noting how the city lights painted patterns on the walls. At 3 a.m., she found herself doing something she'd sworn she never would, opening the Freedom folder on her laptop. The photo was exactly as she remembered. James, she forced herself to use his real name now, standing at the cliff's edge, but she saw it differently now, understanding the weight he'd carried, a family legacy, expectations, the carefully constructed life he'd been afraid to disrupt. Dawn, found her sitting in the hotel's empty restaurant, nursing her second cup of coffee. She'd called Carmen, needing to hear Nova's voice, to ground herself in the reality of their life together. "Mama, I'm wearing my sparkly shoes to the park." "That's great, baby. Be careful on the slides, okay?" "I'm always careful, except when I'm being brave." The conversation left her smiling, even as tears threatened. Nova had James's determination, his intensity. How had she never seen it before? "Rough morning?" The waitress appeared with more coffee. "You could say that." Danielle managed a weak smile. "Ever have one of those moments where your whole world shifts sideways?" "Honey, in this city, that's just Tuesday." Her phone buzzed again. Regina this time. "Where are you? The magazine interview is in 20 minutes. Shit. The interview. The exhibition. The whole reason she was in Atlanta. "On my way," she texted back, gathering her things. The morning passed in a blur of professional obligations. She answered questions about her work on autopilot, discussed artistic vision with gallery owners, smiled for photographs, all while acutely aware that somewhere in this same hotel complex, James Holden was preparing for his keynote. At 10:45, she found herself standing outside the main conference hall. A banner above the door proclaimed International Architecture and Design Summit. People streamed past her, professionals in suits, students with notebooks, journalists with press badges. "Excuse me," a young woman touched her arm. "Are you Danielle Thompson, the photographer?" Danielle nodded automatically. "I love your work, especially Inherited Light. The way you capture mother-daughter relationships." The woman kept talking, but Danielle's attention had fixed on the conference screen behind her, displaying the upcoming schedule. James's face smiled out at the crowd, those storm cloud eyes seeming to look right at her. "I'm sorry," Danielle cut off the woman's praise. "I need to—" She walked into the hall, as if in a dream, found a seat near the back, where shadows gathered despite the bright overhead lights. Her camera hung heavy around her neck. She'd brought it without conscious thought, the way she brought it everywhere. The room filled quickly. Conversations buzzed around her, people discussing sustainability and design innovation. Someone mentioned the Holden family's influence in the industry. Another voice talked about James's recent engagement to Christina Wells, daughter of a prominent Boston family. Engagement. The word hit her like a physical blow. The lights dimmed. A woman stepped up to the podium, beginning James's introduction. One of the most innovative voices in sustainable architecture. Danielle's hand crept to her phone. Nova's smiling face lit up the screen, a recent shot of her in the butterfly wings, spinning in the morning light. Their daughter, his daughter, a secret that could shatter multiple lives. The audience applauded. Footsteps approached the podium. "Thank you for that kind introduction." His voice, exactly as she remembered, that hint of accent softening the edges of his words. Danielle forced herself to look up. James stood at the podium, confident and polished in a charcoal suit. He looked both exactly the same and completely different. Success sat well on him, but there was something else, a certainty in his bearing that hadn't been there 3 years ago. "The future of architecture," he was saying, "lies not just in what we build, but in what we leave behind, the legacy we create for generations to come." Danielle's camera lifted to her eye. Muscle memory, instinct, self-defense. Through the lens, she could distance herself, make him just another subject. Click. His hands gesturing as he spoke about sustainability. Click. The passion in his expression as he described a recent project. Then he smiled. That same half-smile that had first caught her attention on a California cliff. And her hands started shaking so badly she had to lower the camera. "Our choices," James continued, unaware of the woman in the shadows whose life he'd altered forever, "shape not just our own futures, but the futures of those who come after us." Danielle stood abruptly, drawing a few curious glances. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The walls of the massive conference hall seemed to be closing in. She made it to the hallway before her legs gave out, sank onto a bench, gasping for air that seemed too thin. Her phone buzzed. Another photo from Carmen Nova at the park, face tilted to the sky, arms spread wide like the butterfly she pretended to be. So free, so innocent, so unaware that her entire world balanced on the edge of change. Danielle stared at the photo until her vision blurred, then at the conference hall doors. Through them, she could still hear James's voice, strong and sure, talking about legacy and responsibility and choices. She had a choice to make too. The right thing would be to walk away. Let him live his carefully constructed life, protect Nova from complications she didn't ask for. The brave thing would be to stay, to confront him, to give her daughter a chance at knowing her father. Danielle Thompson had built her career capturing moments of truth. Now she had to decide whether to step into one or let it slip away like morning fog on a California beach. Inside the hall, applause erupted. The keynote was ending. Time had run out for contemplation. Stay or go, truth or silence. She stood, squaring her shoulders, camera steady in her hands. Time to be brave. The post-keynote reception buzzed with networking energy, a sea of suits and sophisticated conversation. Danielle stood at the edge of it all, her camera now more shield than tool. James was surrounded by admirers near the center of the room, accepting congratulations with practiced ease. She watched him shake hands, laugh at appropriate moments, navigate the social currents like someone born to it, which, she now knew, he had been. 3 different people had already tried to introduce themselves to her, drawn by the professional camera and her press badge. She'd barely managed polite deflections, her attention fixed on the magnetic pull of James's presence. He looked different in person than he had on stage, more human, less icon. Every so often, his smile would slip slightly, and she'd catch a glimpse of the man she'd known in California. Mr. Holden, a conference organizer, was saying, "The Boston Globe would love a few words." "Of course," that voice again, sending shivers down her spine. "Just give me a moment to—" James turned, scanning the room, and their eyes met. The recognition was instant. She saw it hit him like a physical blow. The slight step backward, the way his hand tightened on his water glass, the flash of something raw and vulnerable beneath his polished exterior. For a heartbeat that seemed to last forever, they stared at each other across the crowded room. Then his professional mask slipped back into place so smoothly that if she hadn't been watching for it, she might have missed the transition. He said something to the organizer, nodded to the waiting journalist, and began making his way toward her with deliberate casualness. Danielle's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd planned what to say, had rehearsed countless openings in her head, but now all those carefully crafted words evaporated like morning dew. "I thought I was hallucinating," he said quietly when he reached her, his voice pitched for her ears alone. During the keynote, I saw someone taking photos from the back, and for a moment he trailed off, studying her face. "You look exactly the same." "You don't." The words came out before she could stop them. "You look older, successful." She squared her shoulders. "James Holden, I finally get a last name." He flinched slightly at her tone. "Danielle, not here." She glanced meaningfully at the people watching them with curious eyes. "Too many cameras that aren't mine." Understanding flickered across his face. "There's a quiet lobby on the 3rd floor. Give me 10 minutes to wrap up here." Part of her wanted to refuse, to make him chase her the way she'd chased shadows of him for 3 years. Instead, she nodded once and turned away, feeling his eyes follow her to the door. The 3rd floor lobby was all elegant furniture and muted lighting, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Atlanta. Danielle paced the thick carpet, her camera heavy around her neck. She'd taken it off twice, then put it back on, needing its familiar weight. Exactly 11 minutes later, she heard his footsteps. He'd loosened his tie, and something about the gesture reminded her so strongly of that night in California that her chest ached. "I rehearsed this moment," he said, staying near the door, 100 times in my head over the years. What I'd say if I ever saw you again. Now I can't remember a single word. Try, I'm sorry for lying about who I was. I never lied. He ran a hand through his hair. Another gesture she remembered. I just didn't tell the whole truth. A lie of omission is still a lie, James. His name felt strange on her tongue. Or do you prefer Mr. Holden now? Don't. He took a step forward, then stopped when she tensed. That night, those days, they were the most real thing in my life. You have to believe that. I don't have to believe anything. But her voice wavered slightly. You're engaged now, I hear. Congratulations. Something complicated passed across his face. It's not. It's complicated. Everything about you is complicated, isn't it? She laughed, a brittle sound. The family business, the expectations, the responsibilities you couldn't walk away from. Tell me, was any part of what you told me true? All of it was true. He moved closer, his expression intense. That's why I couldn't tell you more. Being with you, it was like stepping into a different life. A life where I could just be myself, not a Holden, not an heir, just Jay, she finished softly. Just Jay. Yes. The word came out rough with emotion. They stood in silence for a moment, the city lights behind them casting strange shadows. Danielle's hand crept to her camera, an unconscious gesture of self-protection. You're still taking beautiful pictures, he said, nodding at the camera. Some subjects are impossible to resist. She raised it slightly, like keynote speakers who don't recognize photographers in their audience. His eyes narrowed. I did recognize you. I just couldn't believe it at first. Couldn't process what it meant, seeing you here now. And what does it mean, James? He took another step closer. She could smell his cologne now, different from what he'd worn in California, but still distinctively him. It means the past isn't as buried as I thought. It means, Mr. Holden, a voice called from the hallway. The sustainability panel is starting in 5 minutes. They're requesting your presence. James closed his eyes briefly, frustration evident in every line of his body. I'll be right there. He looked at Danielle pleadingly. We need to talk, really talk. Have dinner with me tonight. I don't think that's a good idea. Please. He pulled out a business card, offered it like a peace offering. My cell number's on there. Call me when you're ready. I'll make time. Danielle stared at the card. Cream-colored, expensive stock, embossed with the Holden and Associates logo. Everything about it screamed wealth and power. Everything about it was wrong for the man she'd known in California. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, probably another photo from Carmen and Nova. The thought was like a splash of cold water. Goodbye, James. She turned toward the elevator without taking the card. Danielle, wait. You're going to be late for your panel. She stepped into the elevator, finally meeting his eyes. And I have a life to get back to. The last thing she saw before the doors closed was his face, stripped of its professional polish, raw with an emotion she couldn't name, or maybe didn't want to. In her room, she plugged her camera into her laptop with shaking hands. The photos from the keynote filled her screen. James at the podium, confident and commanding. James in quiet moments between slides, lost in thought. James looking out at the audience with that familiar half-smile. And in every shot, undeniable now that she let herself see it, were all the little expressions she saw daily in Nova's face. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked. Nova made you a new picture, Ms. Thompson. She says it's butterflies having a tea party. The photo showed a crayon drawing full of colorful swirls and joy, signed in Nova's wobbly handwriting. In the corner, barely visible, she'd drawn a small figure labeled Mama. Danielle touched the screen gently, then looked back at the photos of James. The past and present collided in her mind like a double exposure. The carefree man from California, overlaid with the polished professional of today. Both of them real. Both of them Nova's father. She pulled up her email and opened a blank message, attached James's keynote photos, stared at the address line for a long moment before copying it from the conference program. James, you're right. We need to talk. Her finger hovered over the send button as her daughter's drawing glowed on her phone screen. Nova deserved to know her father. But did James deserve to know Nova? The answer would change everything. The private dining room at Atlas was exactly the kind of place Danielle would have expected James Holden to choose, all understated elegance and discreet service. She arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a simple black dress that made her feel both armed and vulnerable. The hostess led her to a secluded corner where James already waited, standing as she approached. He'd changed from his conference suit into dark slacks and a grey cashmere sweater that made his eyes look almost silver. The sight of him hit her harder than she'd expected, memories of California overlapping with present reality like a long exposure photograph. "You came," he said softly, pulling out her chair. "I almost didn't." She sat, spreading her napkin across her lap with deliberate care. On the table between them sat a leather portfolio, her portfolio, containing the prints she'd selected with excruciating precision. The waiter appeared with water and wine lists. James ordered a bottle of something expensive without consulting her, just as he'd probably ordered this private room and everything else about this carefully orchestrated evening. Still trying to control everything, she couldn't keep the edge from her voice. He had the grace to look abashed. "Dud old habits. Would you prefer something else? The wine is fine, but this," she gestured at their surroundings, "feels a lot more James Holden than Jay. Maybe I'm both." He leaned forward slightly. "Just like you're both the free spirit from California and the successful artist I saw featured in last month's Modern Photography." The fact that he'd seen that article, that he'd been following her career, sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. She pushed it away. "We're not here to discuss my work." "Aren't we?" His eyes fell to the portfolio. "You brought photographs." The waiter returned with the wine, going through the tasting ritual that gave Danielle precious seconds to gather her courage. When they were alone again, she opened the portfolio with hands that only slightly trembled. "3 years ago," she said, laying out the first photo, "I took this." It was the shot from his keynote, James at the podium, caught in a moment of passionate speech. His brow was furrowed in concentration, an expression she'd seen 1,000 times on a much smaller face. "You didn't just take photos at the keynote," he said slowly. "You came looking for me." "Yes." She placed the next photo beside it, Nova at her easel, wearing her favorite paint-splattered smock, wearing that same exact expression of focus. James stared at the images, confusion evident on his face. Then he went completely still, the way he had that night on the cliff when she'd first photographed him. She could see the moment understanding hit him. His face drained of color, his hands gripped the edge of the table. "This is..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Nova." Danielle's voice was steady now. "She's 3 years old. She loves butterflies and finger painting. She has your eyes, your smile, and your habit of furrowing your brow when you're concentrating on something important." James looked like he'd been struck. 3 years, he whispered. "California." "Yes. Why didn't you..." He stopped, ran a shaking hand through his hair. How could you not tell me?" "Tell you what?" The anger she'd held back finally cracked through. "I didn't even know your last name. You disappeared before sunrise, remember? No phone number, no email, no way to contact you. Just a first initial and a lot of vague explanations about responsibilities. I would have..." He stumbled over the words. "If I had known..." "What?" Danielle leaned forward. "You would have what?" "Abandoned those precious responsibilities. Called off your perfect society engagement, told your family that you'd fathered a child with a black photographer you met at an art retreat." Each word hit him like a physical blow. She could see it in his face, in the way his shoulders curved inward, as if protecting himself from the truth. "Show me more," he said finally, voice rough. "Please." Silently, she laid out more photos. Nova on her 3rd birthday, blowing out candles. Nova at the beach, chasing waves. Nova asleep with her favorite stuffed elephant. Nova dancing in her butterfly wings. James touched each photo with trembling fingers, as if he could reach through the paper and touch his daughter. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She's so beautiful. She's perfect." Danielle felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "And she's happy. We're happy. Does she..." He swallowed hard. "Does she ask about me?" She knows that her father gave me the most precious gift and then had to go away. That's all she needs to know. No! The word came out sharp, desperate. That's not... I have a right to... A right! Danielle's laugh was bitter. Rights come with responsibilities, James. You made it very clear which ones mattered to you. That's not fair. I didn't know. Would it have changed anything if you had? The question hung between them like smoke. James stared at the photos, at the daughter he'd never known existed, and Danielle could see the war behind his eyes. I'm engaged, he said finally, the words falling like stones. The wedding is in 3 months. It's not just about me. There are contracts, mergers, family obligations. There always are, aren't there? Danielle began gathering the photos. Thank you for making this easier. Wait. His hand caught hers, warm and familiar and wrong. Please, I need time to think, to figure this out. Figure what out? How to fit your illegitimate daughter into your perfect life. How to explain to your society bride that there's a little brown girl in Brooklyn who has your eyes. He flinched. That's not. I would never what? See her as an inconvenience, a complication. That's all we've ever been to you, James. Complications you couldn't afford. That's not true, his voice cracked. Those days in California, what we had was beautiful, she finished softly, and temporary, just like you wanted. She stood, tucking the portfolio under her arm. James rose too, looking lost in his expensive sweater and carefully ordered life. Danielle, please, I need to meet her. No, the word came out firm, final. Nova doesn't need confusion in her life. She doesn't need to meet a father who's only going to disappear again. I wouldn't. You already did. She turned toward the door, then paused. Congratulations on your engagement, James. I hope it gives you everything you've been looking for. She was almost to the door when his voice stopped her. She has my eyes. Danielle didn't turn around. Yes, and my heart. Thank you for dinner. The Atlanta night was warm and heavy, with unshed rain. Danielle walked 6 blocks before her legs gave out and she sank onto a bench. Above her, the same billboard that had started all this still glowed, James's professional smile beaming down at the city. Her phone buzzed, another text from Carmen, another photo of Nova, this time proudly showing off a tower of blocks she'd built. Look, Mama, I made it all by myself. Danielle touched the screen, tracing her daughter's smile. Not all by herself. Nova carried James in every line of her face, every determined set of her jaw. But she didn't need to know that. Not now. Maybe not ever. The rain finally began to fall, soft and steady like tears. Somewhere in an expensive restaurant, a man who had once been only Jay was staring at empty air where photographs of his daughter had been. Somewhere in Brooklyn, that daughter was probably bargaining with Carmen for 5 more minutes before bedtime. And here, caught between those two realities, Danielle Thompson let the rain wash away the makeup she'd worn like armor. Let it blur the lines between past and present, between what was and what might have been. She had thought telling James about Nova would give her closure. Instead, it felt like opening an old photograph to find the colors had changed. The image shifted into something she barely recognized. Her phone buzzed again, a number she didn't recognize. James. She let it ring into silence, then deleted it without reading his message. Some pictures, once developed, couldn't be undone. All you could do was learn to live with the exposure. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of conference panels and avoided glances. Danielle threw herself into her exhibition, into networking and interviews, into anything that would keep her mind off James. But he was everywhere. His name mentioned in conversations, his face on conference materials, his presence like a ghost at the edge of her vision. He'd tried to contact her 6 more times, 3 calls, 3 messages. She'd deleted them all without reading or listening. What could he possibly say that would change anything? Now, on her last morning in Atlanta, she stood in her hotel room watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of possibility. Her phone lit up with her daily video call from Nova. "Mama, look what I made." Nova's face filled the screen, fresh from sleep, curls wild around her face. She held up a drawing of what might have been a castle or possibly a rocket ship. With Nova's art, it was sometimes hard to tell. "That's beautiful, baby. Tell me about it." As Nova launched into an elaborate explanation involving princesses, dragons, and surprisingly, several talking cucumbers, Danielle found herself searching her daughter's features. James's eyes, definitely, his determined chin, but her smile, her creativity, the way she talked with her whole body, those were pure Danielle. A knock at the door interrupted Nova's story. "Just a second, sweetheart." Danielle muted the call, expecting housekeeping. Instead, she found a young woman in an impeccable suit, holding a thick manila envelope. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Rebecca Chen from Holden and Associates Legal Department. Do you have a moment?" Danielle's heart stopped. "No," she said flatly, starting to close the door. "Please." Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. Mr. Holden wanted to deliver this himself, but, "Oh, well, he thought you might be more receptive if it came from me. Whatever it is, I'm not interested." "It's not what you think." Rebecca held out the envelope. "He's calling off the wedding." The words hit Danielle like a physical blow. She took the envelope automatically, her photographer's eye noting absurd details. The cream-colored paper, the perfect edge of Rebecca's manicure, the way the morning light caught the gold band of her watch. "And inside you'll find documentation of a trust he's establishing for Nova, educational funds, healthcare, everything she could need. He's also—" Rebecca hesitated. "He's stepping down as CEO of Holden and Associates, transferring control to his sister." "What?" Danielle's voice came out barely above a whisper. He said, and I quote, "Some legacies are more important than others." Rebecca's professional demeanor softened slightly. He's not asking for anything in return. He just wanted you to know that he's trying to be the man he should have been 3 years ago." In her room, Nova's voice came through the phone, still muted but audible. "Mama, where did you go?" Rebecca smiled. "She sounds wonderful." "She is." Danielle clutched the envelope like a lifeline. "I don't understand. Why would he—" "Sometimes people surprise us." Rebecca handed her a business card. "Call if you have any questions about the trust. And Ms. Thompson, he's staying at the Lookout Point Inn up in the Berkshires. Small place, very private, in case you want to know." After Rebecca left, Danielle stood motionless. Envelope in one hand, Nova's voice calling from her phone in the other. Finally, she unmuted the call. "Sorry, baby. Mama had to talk to someone for work." Tell me more about the Cucumber Princess." But as Nova resumed her story, Danielle's mind raced. James had blown up his entire life. For what? The chance to know his daughter, the hope of what? She spent the flight back to New York, reading through the trust documents. They were comprehensive, generous without being controlling. No strings attached, no demands for visitation or recognition. Just a father trying to provide for his child, even from a distance. Nova was waiting at the airport with Carmen, butterfly wings firmly in place. She launched herself into Danielle's arms with the force of a small hurricane. "Mama, you're home! Did you bring me something pretty?" Danielle hugged her tight, breathing in her familiar scent of baby shampoo and crayons. "Actually, baby, I brought you something better than pretty. I brought you a story." That night, after Nova was asleep, Danielle sat in her studio surrounded by photographs, the ones from California, the keynote shots, pictures of Nova throughout her 3 years. She laid them out in chronological order, a timeline of choices and consequences. Her phone sat heavy in her hand, James's number now memorized, though she'd deleted it so many times. Outside, a summer storm broke over Brooklyn, lightning illuminating the city in stark flashes of clarity. Nova deserved to know her father. But more than that, she deserved a father who would move heaven and earth to know her, who would sacrifice everything for just the chance to be in her life. The storm raged on as Danielle typed out a message, deleted it, typed again. Finally, she settled on something simple: the Lookout Point Inn, next weekend. Bring your sketchbook. Nova likes to draw too. She pressed send before she could change her mind, then walked to Nova's room. Her daughter slept peacefully, one arm thrown above her head, butterfly wings draped carefully over her bedside chair. In sleep, she looked so much like James that it made Danielle's heart ache. "Your father," she whispered, brushing a curl from Nova's forehead, "is trying very hard to be brave, just like you." Her phone buzzed softly. James's reply, "Thank you for everything. I promise I won't disappear this time." Danielle looked at her sleeping daughter, then back at the message. Sometimes the bravest thing wasn't walking away to protect someone. Sometimes it was standing still, opening your heart, and letting love rewrite the story you thought was finished. Outside, the storm began to clear, stars peeking through breaks in the clouds. In her dreams, Nova chased butterflies through an endless summer afternoon, while two people who had once found and lost each other watched from a safe distance, learning slowly how to bridge the space between them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new hopes. But tonight, in a quiet Brooklyn apartment, possibility hung in the air like the fresh-washed feeling after rain. Sometimes the most beautiful photographs were the ones you never planned to take. Sometimes the most important stories were the ones that wrote themselves, in the spaces between what was and what could be. The Berkshires in early fall were a photographer's dream. Danielle stood at the edge of the Lookout Point Inn's garden, camera in hand, watching Nova twirl through falling leaves in her ever-present butterfly wings. Each spin scattered more golden foliage into the air, creating a shower of natural confetti that caught the afternoon light perfectly. "And higher, Daddy, throw them higher," James obliged, scooping up another handful of leaves and tossing them skyward, his laughter mixed with Nova's delighted squeals, the sound warming Danielle's heart even as it squeezed it. 6 months had passed since that stormy night in Brooklyn, when she'd decided to give them all, a chance. She raised her camera, capturing the moment. James in casual clothes she'd never imagined him wearing, designer jeans dusted with dirt and leaves, that expensive sweater from Atlanta replaced by a soft flannel shirt. Nova, her curls wild with excitement, reaching for the falling leaves, the joy on both their faces so pure it almost hurt to witness. Click. The sound drew James's attention. He looked up, meeting her eyes with that same intensity she remembered from California, but tempered now with something deeper. Understanding, maybe, or peace. "Come join us, Mama," Nova called. "Daddy's teaching me about architecture," James corrected gently, that half-smile playing at his lips. "That's what I said." Nova grabbed his hand, tugging him toward a pile of leaves and sticks she'd arranged in what might have been a floor plan. "See? This is where the butterfly room goes." "The butterfly room, huh?" James knelt beside her creation, giving it the same serious consideration he'd once given million-dollar projects. "Tell me more about that." Danielle lowered her camera, content to watch. These weekend visits had become their new normal. James driving up from his small Boston apartment where he now ran a boutique sustainable architecture firm, Nova bubbling with excitement to share her latest drawings or stories, Danielle learning to trust in slow, steady growth. "Miss Thompson," the innkeeper's voice called softly from the porch, "there's a call for you. The gallery in San Francisco." Right. The exhibition, her new collection, Growing Light, had caught the attention of major galleries on both coasts. Critics were calling it her most powerful work yet, an exploration of family, forgiveness, and the way love could bloom in life's unexpected spaces. "I'll be right there." She caught James's eye, gesturing toward the inn. He nodded, already deep in consultation with Nova about the proper placement of a stick that was apparently a crucial support beam. The call was brief but significant. The San Francisco show was confirmed with an opening date in spring. As she hung up, Danielle found herself thinking about another California spring, 3 years and a lifetime ago. When she returned to the garden, she found James and Nova had progressed from architecture to engineering. They were attempting to build a leaf pile high enough for Nova's stuffed elephant to safely parachute from. No luck with the butterfly room? She asked, settling onto a nearby bench. We're saving that for the real house, Nova announced, then clapped her hands over her mouth, eyes wide. Oops, that was supposed to be a surprise. James shot Danielle an apologetic look. I was going to tell you over dinner. I found a property here in the Berkshires. It needs work, but it has potential, good bones, amazing light. He hesitated. There's a separate studio space that would be perfect for photography. Danielle's heart skipped. James, no pressure, he said quickly. I know we're still figuring things out, but I thought maybe someday. Daddy's going to build me a tree house. Nova interrupted, immune to the tension between her parents, with a special place for butterflies to visit. Is he now? Danielle raised an eyebrow at James. Only if it's okay with Mama, he told Nova firmly. Remember what we talked about. Big decisions need everyone's agreement. Nova considered this, her face scrunched in that way that was pure James. But Mama loves trees, and butterflies, and Daddy. Her expression turned sly. And Daddy loves Mama. I heard him tell Uncle Ryan on the phone. James flushed, caught between embarrassment and laughter. Yes, you, little miss, are supposed to be building a parachute launch pad, but Nova had already moved on, chasing a real butterfly that had wandered into the garden. They watched her go, trailing leaves and joy in her wake. She's right, you know, James said softly, about all of it. Danielle turned to look at him. The setting sun painted his face in shades of gold, reminding her of that first photograph on the California cliff. But his eyes were different now, clear, certain, unguarded. I know, she replied, because she had known for months, watching him rebuild his life around Nova's schedule, seeing him choose fatherhood over fortune, witnessing his patient dedication to earning back her trust. He reached for her hand, slowly enough that she could pull away if she wanted to. She didn't. I'm not asking for everything at once, he said, just possibility. A chance to build something real together this time. No more running, no more hiding. Nova's laughter floated across the garden as she continued her butterfly pursuit. Danielle squeezed James's hand, thinking about galleries in San Francisco and houses in the Berkshires, about butterfly rooms and second chances. I'm keeping my apartment in Brooklyn, she said, at least for now. Of course. And my work comes with travel. Exhibition openings, shoots. We'll make it work. His thumb traced patterns on her palm. I'm pretty good at architectural solutions. She laughed despite herself. Was that a dad joke? I'm practicing. His smile turned serious. I've missed so much already. I don't want to miss anything else. Nova ran back to them, breathless and glowing. The butterfly got away. But that's okay, because Daddy says sometimes the best things are the ones you have to wait for. She climbed into James's lap, butterfly wings slightly crooked. Right, Daddy. Right, sweetheart. He smoothed her curls, meeting Danielle's eyes over their daughter's head. Sometimes the best things take time. Danielle raised her camera one last time, capturing them in the perfect evening light. Father and daughter, dark heads bent together, matching smiles soft with shared secrets. The past and future wrapped in one frame. Click. Later, this would become her favorite photograph from the new collection. Critics would praise its composition, its use of natural light, the way it captured both intimacy and possibility. But for Danielle, it was simply a reminder that the most beautiful stories sometimes took the longest to develop. Mama, Nova's voice was drowsy now, the excitement of the day catching up with her. Can we come back tomorrow? Danielle looked at James, at the question in his storm cloud eyes, at the life they could build in this space between what was and what could be. Yes, she said softly, and we can come back tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, and all the tomorrows after that, until the light was perfect and the story was complete. If you were in Danielle's shoes, would you have given James a second chance after discovering that he gave up everything, his career, his arranged marriage, and his luxurious lifestyle, just for the possibility of being part of his daughter's life, a daughter he never knew existed? Is there any redemption strong enough to make up for 3 years of absence? Your participation in this channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to